even get to cross.
Hello, BTC. This is your boy, DJ Barbecue, with another edition of BTC Live. BTC Live is powered by KBack.Rocks. Rock radio the way it should be. Also sponsored by Midwest All Pro Wrestling. Feel the excitement. And then, by the way, if you're bored and you're listening, go get a White Claw, because there ain't no laws when you're drinking the claws. Okay, we got a really special guest here today. We got another co-host that's been here on several shows, David Tigerman Smith. David, Tiger,
yes.
Thank you for coming in today. You also have a special guest that you brought in. Why don't you tell us about him?
We have Mr. Cole Dawson. This is the guy when I was in the height of pro wrestling, we would always spend hours just talking about wrestling, always be at his house eating pizza. He is actually the brother of Candice LeRae and brother-in-law of Johnny Gargano.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Dave. I appreciate that you skipped over all the wrestling stuff that we did at my house. That was fun, because back in those times you weren't allowed to talk about being a backyard wrestler. But that's how we started in the wrestling business. I bought a wrestling ring, and you and a handful of other guys that were already trained professional wrestlers were kind of part of the crew and taught me and Candice LeRae how to wrestle, and we've been going ever since, and she made a career out of it, and so I guess I get to talk to you guys.
So there you have it. I want to point this out, that I actually have credit in helping train Candice LeRae.
Yes, I just gave you some of that credit.
So some of the viewers and listeners don't know Cole as much as they know the Tiger Man. Cole, why don't you give them a little backstory about what influenced you and what gave you that flu of professional wrestling, if you want to put it in that concept, and what got you started in professional wrestling?
That's a great question. I really appreciate you said some of the people don't know who I am. That's fantastic. That means that somebody does, and that's great. It was one of those things. I had some older cousins. They were wrestling fans, and one weekend I think we were watching, my parents took my cousins in for the weekend, and my older cousin always watched the WWF, and it was one of those things that parents were like, maybe we shouldn't let them watch that, but he was watching it out in our living room, and I was kind of peeking around the corner, and I see Earthquake running the ropes and squashing a giant snake in the middle of the ring, and then making snake burgers and stuff, and I'm like, oh, what is this? I need to watch this. And that, you couldn't stop me from trying to find me some Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan and just watch, and every Monday night trying to keep my TV turned down so that I didn't get caught staying up past my bedtime watching Monday Night Wrestling. And after that, there was no stopping me. It was just nonstop wrestling as much as I could get my hands on. And then as I got older, when I went to high school, Dave's tag team partner at the time, Handsome Johnny Starr, went to he was in the marching band with me, of all things. And I think like the very last day of school, I wore a WWF shirt to school, and he goes, "Hey, you like wrestling?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Dude, I'm a professional wrestler. Come to my house and hang out." And we went over to his house, and we started jumping around on the trampoline. He started showing us how to do body slams and suplexes and that kind of thing. And then we just started spending after school times and weekends at his house doing wrestling matches on the trampoline. And then when we graduated, we both had good paying family business jobs, and so we bought a wrestling ring for $5,000 and put it up in my backyard and just started training. And I graduated with T.J. Perkins at high school at Poly High School in Riverside, California here. And so we have two WWE superstars from right back-to-back graduating classes at Riverside Poly High School. But there were actually about 6 or 8 people that went to our high school that were nearby that were training at the wrestling school in San Bernardino here in California, Jesse Hernandez's school. So that was it. I had an in, and my sister never stopped, and so it worked out pretty good for her. And now I'm here talking to you guys.
Very cool. But both you, Tiger Man, and Cole, you can give the viewers and listeners a little example. Like, I'm from the upper Midwest, so the wrestling like feeling and atmosphere is a little different. Why don't you give them a little like example of how it was, how that wrestling scene was down there where you guys are from?
You know, SoCal was very interesting when we started. It's funny, back in the 70s and 80s, this was like where Roddy Piper and the Guerrero family like became famous, was out here in Southern California because there's a big Mexican population here. So Lucha Libre style is really big in Southern California. It's actually a really cool place. Once my sister got more advanced in the business and she moved to the East Coast, like we didn't realize that on the East Coast and the rest of the country, like they don't do lucha at wrestling. Like we do lucha in wrestling school in Southern California. So like we learned all the styles together because we also had New Japan, or Antonio Inoki built a wrestling school here in LA while right about in the hype. So we had the best of Lucha Libre, the best of Japanese wrestling, and the best American style wrestling all right here in Southern California. But what's crazy is like nobody really knew about Southern California, but we had like the perfect melting pot of all the styles of wrestling here. So if you started here, you really got to learn everything, which is why now you see guys like Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels. They're like some of the best professional wrestlers in the business, most well-rounded. They can wrestle anybody and make them look good because they got a lot of training in all the different styles here in Southern California.
I'd like to add that in like the early 2000s, the mid-2000s, SoCal had pretty much AEW shows before there was an AEW, and we had them pretty much weekly.
Yeah.
Was that the PWG?
No, this was before PWG.
Okay.
PWG helped usher it in, but we were having like those matches, and they were quality matches too. We had, every couple months a new promotion would pop up and have a whole new supercard.
Okay.
We had Jack Evans before, Jack Evans. He was wrestling for Pro Wrestling War, and they actually made him the new Blitzkrieg.
Okay.
Which was a WCW wrestler that had a handful of matches there, but he was very impressive. We had all these names in SoCal before they were big, and the talent was still there. It was an amazing time for SoCal wrestling, we will never be at the height of that again.
You don't think that it would ever come back to that? Just like, you're kind of having this evolve, and no pun intended to the promotion out in the East Coast, but you have this evolving thing that's happening now with all these promotions. Now that, AEW is involved in this with WWE, which, competition is always great. And also, controversy creates cash. The shout out to Eric Bischoff, my friend's uncle. The one thing is that do you guys feel like that could evolve from what you guys had back then?
I think it will always be good, but I think this was just, the stars aligning and everything's in motion and stuff like this. But this was the best time for SoCal indie wrestling.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I think part of the evolution has been that now that the internet exists, it's a little easier for people to get the word out about their wrestling stuff. So we had, he's not exaggerating, Dave, Tiger Man, there were literally dozens of wrestling promotions in Southern California you could wrestle for. And I think something like that is possible. There's actually quite a few now. But the problem is the pay scale on the East Coast is enough where you can make a living. And you can move to the East Coast and actually make a living as a professional wrestler on the independents, whereas in Southern California, you're lucky if you're getting $50 a night.
That's really that big of a difference?
Yes. On the East Coast, when you start out, if you're the lowest guy in the card, you're getting $50 a night, period. On a Wednesday night, you're getting $50-$60 to wrestle. So if you wrestle 4 nights a week, you can make $300 or $400. You can sell T-shirts and do all that. And then, a lot of guys, they basically buy these giant houses and they treat them as dorms, and it'll be 6 or 8 wrestlers living together. And so and they just kind of travel and they hit all the shows. But there's nothing like that on the West Coast, and there's no wrestling promotion in Vegas or in Phoenix. If there were big time for wrestling promotions all around, if we could set something up like that, then we could make SoCal viable again. But, I mean, SoCal isn't completely dead because at least now there's two big nationally known promotions with Bar Wrestling that's run by Joey Ryan and with Pro Wrestling Guerrilla is still going strong. They sell out in 5 minutes every time still. So there's some viability here, but the problem is all those wrestling promotions are flying the same indie wrestlers in from the East Coast. They're not using local talent very much.
Now, those two promotions that you said, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dave.
But Bar Wrestling?
But those two promotions that you said, is that kind of similar because of my friend that's down at Championship Arizona, Wrestling of Arizona, and then they have that Championship Wrestling of Hollywood. Is that kind of in that same concept?
Well, no, those are completely different. The Championship Wrestling guy is somebody who thinks, Dave Marquez is the guy in charge of that, and he thinks that professional wrestling died in 1981 when Ric Flair was champion.
Okay.
And so he's still trying to recreate something that's from 1981, and more power to him. That's what he loves. That's his thing. But he's doing something completely different. He's doing a studio-style 1981, like, corny, cheesy, old-school wrestling thing, which is great. It works for him, and I have a lot of friends that work with that, and
I just didn't know, and I figured I'd ask that question for the people that are there. But I mean,
yeah, PWG and Bar Wrestling are more like the independent style AEW matches, like the more they're like the Young Bucks and Joey Janela and those kind of guys. It's more that kind of style. I mean, Joey Ryan, who is the king of Dong style, that he's the guy in charge of Bar Wrestling. Bar Wrestling's kind of set up as a giant party atmosphere. Just everyone show up. They don't even have seats. Like, it's literally just at a bar. Everyone shows up. Let's get drunk. Let's just have fun. Let's have a wrestling show in the middle of the dance floor. Like, cool. Okay. And it's really a cool atmosphere. It's a lot of fun. But they're just bringing in the big independent stars, and they just, there's really no stories or anything. They just go out, let's have a wrestling show, let's get drunk, and everyone have fun. It's really fun to go to.
Right on. So, Tiger Man, you wanted to say something. Sorry that I interrupted you.
Yeah, I think one of the better promotions in SoCal, too, is Lucha Vavoom.
Yes.
I think it's something that's very different, and no one else is even coming close to having something like that.
Yeah, and they draw big crowds too. Like they're drawing a couple thousand people. I mean, they do well.
Wow.
Yeah, and I love the art on their posters. It's just completely old school lucha, and it's entertaining and it's amazing. I actually have a friend that used to do a lot of their older posters, Rafael Navarro. He also worked a lot on the Batman animated series cartoon. Like all the buildings in the background and stuff, he's the one that designed those for the cartoon.
Oh,
he also animated for Rugrats and all this. So they know quality stuff, and they will get the best people to help with that promotion. So that's one thing that really sets Lucha Vavoom out from every other lucha show in SoCal.
So you guys have been in the evolution out there in SoCal. Let's go to the other perspective here. Now, you had the whole Monday Night Wars, and you had that competition, and you didn't really know because you didn't have the access to like what we have today with all the social media to know all these other promotions that are out there, and there's a lot of them, from independent to lower independent to higher ones to the big leagues. And that's even overseas. What's your feeling about with all these, and I'll let you guys talk about this because you have the experience. What do you feel about this whole, Raw being on USA still, and then they're moving SmackDown to Fox, to AEW going to TNT, which is the old territory of WCW, and then you got Impact Wrestling parent company Anthem that just bought Access TV, which has Ring of Honor, which has WOW Women of Wrestling, which has New Japan Pro Wrestling. What do you guys feel, and discuss this about what this means as professional wrestlers and also means as professional wrestling as a whole?
I guess I'll start this off. As a wrestler, you can never go wrong with more places to work. You can never go wrong with building up your resume. So that's just pluses on them, More people see you, more shirts you get to sell, the higher your booking fee. et cetera, et cetera. It's just amazing. As a fan, you're getting all this wrestling and you get to watch it. It's like how for decades long the Law and Order fans, they got it like all handed to them, where it's Law and Order, SVU. Anytime you want to see Law and Order, you could put on the TV and watch it.
Right.
Now wrestling fans get that.
Yeah, it's in the syndication and stuff like that. Yeah, I see your.
Yeah, it is really awesome. Like, there was a long period of time, like from, back when Vince McMahon started WWF, he took over and he started everything. Basically, everywhere you went, every part of the country, every state, like, they had their own professional wrestling. Like, if you were up in the Minnesota area, you watched the AWA. If you were northeast, you watched WWF. If you were down south, you either watched the NWA or you watched Georgia Championship Wrestling, or you watched in Dallas, you watched the Von Erichs. And then once Vince McMahon took over, he kind of ended up with a monopoly. As him and the NWA took half the country, sort of, and the NWA became WCW. And then that was kind of it. Like, for indie wrestlers, you couldn't make any money. That was kind of the biggest problem for, like, Dave and I when we got in the business. You couldn't make any money. And so, like, I know we both kind of petered out after a while, but, like, I had kids, I had a family. I couldn't just keep not making any money as a wrestler. I had to focus on my job and everything. And then now, like, you don't even have to be with one of these companies that's on TV. You can make six figures. So it's great for the wrestling business. I have so many friends that are making a living now. They don't have to have a real job. They get to make money being a professional wrestler, and I think that's great for everybody that's in the business, that everyone can make a living. There's plenty of money to go around. If you don't like WWF, you can watch Ring of Honor. If you don't like Ring of Honor, you can watch New Japan. Like, there's something for everybody, and I just love where the business is at right now.
Right. There was this person that released this information, and I don't think anybody's confirmed it quite yet. And I know that Impact hasn't said anything publicly on any of their social media accounts. But there's a rumor going around that Impact's interested in buying Ring of Honor. And the only reason why I'm bringing that up is since you guys are, in the professional wrestling industry, and you have also other ties to it too. Do you think that's a positive? And what do you think they should do? Because there's an option of part of that rumor is that they were going to do two separate shows. They're kind of like a Raw and SmackDown concept, but it would be your Impact and your Ring of Honor on different days. What do you feel about that? Is that good? Because I feel like that'll be the first time ever you have four major companies.
I think right now, Impact has to build up a lot more than just being on the Pursuit Network in order to even be good or bad. They need exposure. They need a TV deal. They need their stuff to be more easily accessed to get fans before it can be a good thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, one of the things that unfortunately has kind of happened with AEW becoming the second big company is they've signed a lot of talent. And then the last few years, WWE has kind of seen this coming where other companies like Ring of Honor and New Japan have really gotten popular. So they signed a lot of talent. And so there's only so much talent to go around,
right.
Which is that was one of the reasons that the territories died out, because Vince McMahon bought everybody, and so there was no one to draw money anymore on these little territories. And so what we're kind of seeing, unfortunately, what's going to happen now is that independent wrestling the cycle is going to cycle back down, and it's going to kind of die back down again because there's not going to be anyone to go to these shows to draw the card.
Right.
Anymore. So unfortunately, I feel like it's going to hurt indies, but especially if Ring of Honor or Impact really wants to step up and be that third or fourth option, they got a long way to go. Like, there's a long drop off between WWE and then where AEW is. There's a really big drop off to get down to Ring of Honor and Impact, and because Impact was just so badly managed for so many years. Like,
right.
We were still hanging out when TNA started, and I remember Dave and I would be recording shows and, like, bringing it over and, like, hey, man, you got to see this three-way.
It was our favorite. What was that match? It was AJ Styles, Jerry Lynn, and
Low-Key,
yeah, that three-way.
Oh.
That was, like, our favorite match at the time.
Yeah, for sure. For, like, a year and a half, that was, like, the best match in a long time. And yeah, so I mean, we used to every Wednesday is like everyone needs to come over so we can watch, the Impact or TNA, whatever it was at the time.
Yeah.
And for a long time, it was really good, and it was a viable second option. And then they decided they wanted to hire all the old, retired, like washed up guys that used to be at WCW or that WWE had just fired, and they just kind of ran their product into the ground, which is the thing I'm most excited about for AEW right now is that they're using a good mix of people who are actually still stars in the business, like Chris Jericho, and they're using young guys who kind of were big at WWF but never like made the big stardom, so people never got sick of them.
Right.
And then they're using all new talent. So these are all people that the fans are going to get to know instead of having like, but the Dudley Boys shoved down their throat again, who were big 25 years ago, and now they're just fat.
Right.
Yeah, it's like TNA when it first started. It was they took what made them special and what made people want to watch them, and then they turned it into what was already around, and it was just a watered down imitation of it.
Right.
So that's what really killed it.
I was just gonna say, because I remember when TNA was actually doing more pay-per-view type of style shows and recorded them and then putting them out instead of having like that, which they called, they ended up calling TNA Impact. They had different names, subtitles for it, but they were here in a city that's like a half hour away from me, and it was basically all your top WCW guys, the ones that didn't go over that WWE didn't do, but they still had contracts from Turner that still had to be paid out. And so that was the allure of it. But then you're right, Tiger, like they started like doing a watered down version of what WCW did. And I think that's kind of like when they started rolling out, because like you guys said, low key, AJ Styles, Jerry Lynn, I mean, the 6-sided ring, it was all original, and that's what attracted me. Plus the women's division. I always gave respect to the beautiful people, the two original OGs that were in that women's tag team. Like that was cool. It was new. It was
I want to touch a little bit on the women's wrestling and how far it's come since mine and Cole's day.
Oh, for sure.
And Candice LeRae, his sister, is one of the, in my opinion, one of the front runners of one of the people that really changed it. Because back then, when like she first started, it was all about looks. We'd have like a new female wrestling at EWF, and she wouldn't know a wrist lock from wristwatch. She'd just be in there, and it was a joke. Candice actually trained to wrestle men. She trained to have good matches with guys. She just took that whole cliche thing and actually turned it into wrestling. And I feel people started seeing this on the indie shows, and they actually started changing, and they got the desire to like really want to boost it up. So I think Candice is actually one of the founding women of modern women wrestling.
Yeah,
I won't disagree with you at all.
Yeah. Her popularity was like above most of the male independent wrestlers that I remember, because I mean, it was unbelievable. You had Joey Ryan type of popularity. You had Adam Cole. You had all these other guys up there, and Candice was right there in popularity. Yeah. I mean, the pop that she got when she debuted in NXT was bigger than most of the other talent that came in previously before her.
Well, it was insane. Like, I knew when I went to a lot of her matches earlier on, because they were a little more spread out, a little fewer and farther between, while she was still trying to get a foothold. And I knew she was starting to get over, right? And then she had this match at one of the local wrestling promotions called AWS. It's Bart Kapitsky. He's the promoter there. Really good dude. Did a lot. He's also did a lot for women's wrestling, specifically in SoCal. But he saw my sister, and he took her and said, hey, I'm going to start doing a women's tournament every single year now. And I'm going to invite all these women from that are spread out around the country, bring them here, and put them in there with Candice, make them all look amazing. And we're going to do this. Well, at one of these shows, she did a hardcore match with the wrestler. I can't remember her name, but she ended up. They both were bleeding, and it was this big match. And then all of a sudden, like you could go on the internet and you started seeing buzz about my sister everywhere. And then she was doing more and more stuff at PWG. So it had been probably about 6 or 8 months since I went and saw her. And I went and saw her at PWG. And she's in a 6-person tag. She's wrestling the Young Bucks and Kevin Steen. What is it? Kevin Owen, right?
Yeah.
And so she's just like on the apron, whatever. And the match is going on. And the Bucks tagging Kevin Steen. Kevin Owens, he comes in the ring and he goes, "I want to fight the bitch." And he points over at my sister, and all 500 people in this audience jump out of their seats and start chanting, "Fuck him up, Candace, fuck him up." And I'm like, whoa. She's gone from like, okay, this little girl's a wrestler, it's cool, to they legit think that my 5'1", 110-pound sister is going to beat the ever-loving shit out of 6-foot-tall, 280-pound Kevin Owens. Like,
I believe it.
Yeah. And that exactly. So like she went so far beyond the suspension of disbelief where people legit think she's Rey Mysterio. She's a superhero. She can do anything. And Dave's right. That's because, she didn't take the same approach as most of the other girls that when we were training, they were starting. They're just like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They're pretty. They don't need to learn how to do it right. Just good enough so that they can get in there and have a match. And my sister's goal was always, I'm going to be as good as the guys.
We had failed actresses that also failed at professional wrestling. I remember when Candace first started out, there was such a lack of like actual talent. We actually had to train Cole's cousin Shirley.
Yeah.
To wrestle with Candace.
Yeah, that's legit. Like the first 2-3 years of her career, she almost only wrestled my cousin Shirley, and she literally just trained so Candace would have someone to work with. Because at the time she couldn't work with guys. It couldn't do a man versus woman match. And then after she did the stuff with the Bucks at PWG, that all changed. Like it changed the whole business, legit. After they saw the success of that, every independent show in America you could go, they had an intergender match. And that's like straight up because of my sister. And I have no problem saying that.
So I know a lot of people are, giving Becky Lynch, Bayley, Sasha Banks credit for the whole new, strides in women wrestling, but nah, in my opinion, it's Candice LeRae.
Well, yeah.
100%.
I mean, they did it on the mainstream level. And realistically, like, I mean, if we want to be real about it, we have to give Ronda Rousey a huge amount of credit because in a shoot sport like UFC, she became the biggest star in fighting. Like, she's one of only 5 people who've drawn $1 million people bought her pay-per-view.
Right.
She's one of only like 5 people in history of UFC that happened for. And so she changed the idea of what women could do in combat sports. And professional wrestling, even though it's not really a sport, it's kind of seen in the same vein as combat sports as opposed to entertainment. And so once we've seen that, hey, women can draw millions of dollars, so why can't Becky Lynch, why can't Charlotte Flair, why can't these girls do it? So
right. So we'll go on another spectrum too. So with the newly addition of taking NXT to USA Network from the WWE Network, they've been doing a couple of their pre-recorded shows and kind of giving people storylines to build up for their debut this Wednesday coming up here on the 18th on USA Network. I think it's 8/7 Central is when it's on. A lot of people, because of a certain segment last Wednesday, and I got permission to ask this question, so there's no questions that I'm not like asking without having permission, because I have a lot of respect for Tiger Man and Cole. I want to hear from both of you guys, and obviously, Cole, you have a connection to this question. Why do you think so many people are giving, and I don't really like saying this because I don't want to do plugs, but yes, he's your brother-in-law. Why do you think they're giving him such a hard time for deciding to be, and I love the homage to the NWO, for life. He decided to say that he's in NXT for life. Why do you think he's getting that much slack for staying there?
Well, it's really funny when it comes to like sports and people, because people always have like very contradictory attitudes about the money that comes along with sports. Like, you hear people all the time like, oh, why wouldn't they take less money and stay at home? Why don't they want to win this and that, whatever? And then somebody does it, like my brother-in-law Johnny's here. Like, look, I feel like this is the best roster in the world. This is a winning team. Yeah, I might make a little bit more money if I'm on the main roster and I'm on WrestleMania and Royal Rumble and all that stuff. But this is a winning roster right here. This is who I want to be with. And I'm going to stay loyal to my brand, and I want to stay here, and a little bit of it's silly because it's really not up to him, if we're going to be honest. Like, Vince McMahon is going to decide who's going to be on what show no matter what, right?
Right.
But I understand, like, it's just a weird mentality. It's like, well, if people pass over, like, real money, like, there's this misconception that if you're on NXT, you're not making any money. And I know that's not true. Like, my sister and her husband are doing fine. They're making enough money.
They go on a Disney cruise every other weekend.
Well, yeah, like if you follow their Instagram, you could say they probably are doing okay in the money department. Like I know they're not making millions of dollars or anything like that, but they're doing fine. They're making more than enough money to make a comfortable living and all that. And so there's either way, their job is going to be they're being a professional wrestler. So you can either be a professional wrestler with the extra added stress and a lot of people don't know this, but like on the main roster, you make more money, but it also costs you more money to be on the main roster because on the main roster they don't pay for your transportation, they don't pay for your hotels, they don't pay for your food. Right. Whereas at least at this point at NXT, like you go on the tour bus and then you all stay at the same hotel, they have catering, like. So, like, they're taking care of you on NXT, and I think part of it is because they are paying them less money.
Basically,
and it's part of their developmental, so yeah. I
put it this way, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I put it this way.
Worries.
Basically, what your sister and your brother-in-law are making right now would be basically the same amount of money in some concepts if they go to the main roster because people have to understand this. You have to add in that, the ticket prices for the plane tickets. The fuel and gas, the rental car, or else if they decide to buy a car, and then the maintenance, then the food.
Yeah.
Like and then obviously, unfortunately, I mean this stuff happens. But if they get injured, they got to pay for their insurance. So there's all this other added stuff in there. So basically, it'd be almost like they would get paid the same amount that they are in NXT in some cases. Just as an example, the one thing my feeling is. That says a lot about the character of the individual. I mean, yeah, you said Vince McMahon, Triple H has, stayed down there. But I tell you what, there hasn't been anybody, and this isn't the Kiss Tiger's butt, this isn't the Kiss Cole's butt. There hasn't been anybody in professional wrestling, probably in 10 years, that did not have that much hype, that much influence to a lot of the storylines, true storylines of professional wrestling, like Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. The absolute 2 years of a storyline to get to the point where they were at. The storytelling was absolutely amazing. And I'm liking that he's staying in NXT. There's nobody else.
I'll have to interrupt you and say this. I don't think they could pick anyone else to be the face of NXT besides Johnny.
Right.
He's an amazing athlete. His matches are top notch. He's the perfect to be the face of NXT. And with him choosing to stay with NXT, that's the choice he's made, is to be the face of the entire brand instead of being buried underneath Roman Reigns.
And that's the thing that I had a big problem in that with them moving to USA, because I felt like because I have such a support and respect for Shayna Baszler, because she's from my home state, and I like that, and there's a story behind the reason why they still say Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I love that concept. But I would feel like even with Johnny or Candice, they wouldn't give them the respect of the hard work on the main roster. They would just get jobbed, like they get thrown out there like a Ricochet. I don't think they get the right respect and the right booking.
Yeah, I also want to point out one thing. During the Monday Night Wars, before that, what was WCW exactly? You know what I mean? NXT, yeah, it's developmental right now, but let's see where this war takes it, because that's going to step them up a lot.
Yeah, I think legitimately they could step up and be right there with SmackDown and with Raw on the same footing. The ratings are going to be really interesting to watch for this. It's going to be interesting to see, because right now what the numbers that they have is that NXT is the main thing selling the network right now. The WWE network is being sold by NXT's popularity. So it'll be interesting to see the actual ratings. How are they going to do on Wednesday night on USA? Are they going to do SmackDown numbers? Are they going to do Raw numbers? Are they going to do something a little bit smaller? Because realistically, it is just a niche audience who likes that style of professional wrestling. It's a little more serious, a little more athletics.
To the masses worldwide more on the network than USA, because USA doesn't have like that global of a. Even if it's satellite dishes, there's other markets that they have to go through, for the world market and all that. I think NXT for the longest time has been the top promotion. I mean, from all the talent that's in there, the way that they do storylines, how they put this together with your brother-in-law Johnny now, I think that this is a better product than anything that Raw. I know that for right now, NXT is going to be an hour-long live on USA because of commitment for right now for the next couple weeks because of their other shows that they have to get final up on Wednesday. And then it goes to the WWE Network, and then after those couple weeks, it'll be the full 2 hours is what they released just the other day. But I think NXT is far by the better brand than all of them. I know I've been really critical on BTC and out there in social media about how I like AEW, the concept, because it's something new. But I think NXT is the not to quote, Sheamus and Cesaro, but they have the bar set really high, especially with their takeovers. Everybody else has to get up there.
They chose NXT to battle AEW for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't move SmackDown back to that night. You know what I mean? They put NXT there.
Right.
That's the thing. That's 100% the thing. So let's see how it plays out. And unless you guys know exactly how much Johnny Gargano makes, don't mention the paycheck. 100%.
Cole, I think that's your spot. No, I'm just kidding. Never mind.
Yeah, no, that's not my spot.
Yeah.
Joking purposes, that's the reason why I said it.
That's one of those things. Even if I did know, then
you wouldn't say, and I hope you wouldn't say. I'm just saying.
On coffee here.
Right? All of a sudden, you're drinking your coffee, and I mentioned that, you're like, it spits out. And like, oh yeah, no, I was just kidding. Kidding on that point.
No idea, bro.
So what do you guys feel like what could happen here? Do you think that there could be this like what do I want to say? Do you think that there might be a possibility that WWE might have shot themselves in the foot for their other main roster shows because of how successful NXT as a platform is and how much the roster that they have works their asses off?
That will be the interesting thing to see. For me, I think it's going to come down to, can Vince McMahon keep his hands off?
Right.
Is he going to stay away? Is he going to let Triple H do his thing and keep running this thing the way he's doing it? I also feel like one of the things that is going to happen, because when you watch NXT's TV show, they save a little bit of the athleticism and the big stunts and everything. They save a lot of that stuff for just the takeover. So I don't think that the TV show itself is going to be so above and beyond what Raw and SmackDown are in the ring. Where I think NXT is just so much better than the other stuff is that they've been taking their time building these characters, building the storylines, and slow playing it so that by the time we actually get to the blow-off, we're emotionally invested in it. And my concern is that going to a weekly format where you got to fill 2 hours of TV every week live, that you can't have Johnny Gargano on TV once a month. You're going to have to put Johnny out there twice a month, 3 times a month, every week even, because that's, especially if they're going to try to get in this ratings war. AEW, I think, is the most important piece here.
I hope they concentrate on Tommaso and Johnny. I hope they do.
I do too, but my concern is Yeah, it took what, a year? Realistically, it took what, 4 years to build that storyline up to a payoff, and then we didn't get the payoff because of Tommaso's injuries.
But I
right?
think it worked though. It worked.
Exactly. Well, but that's what worked for WWF in the first place. Like, Hogan and Andre was this big, giant story arc build-up to what was essentially the biggest audience in the history of television. They had like 30 million people watching the main event on NBC. I mean, it's still, to this day, the most watched wrestling event ever in the history of ever. So,
and
like,
now I want to point this out.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. I told Charles, I go, you think I know a lot about wrestling? Wait until you meet Cole. And this is proving my point right now.
Right?
All right, go on, Cole.
But, I mean, yeah, because they used to take their time to build these stories. Like, you remember WrestleMania 4 where Macho Man won the big tournament, right? Him and Hogan celebrated in the ring after, and we had the Mega Powers, and then they built that storyline from WrestleMania 4 all the way to WrestleMania 5, and it was the biggest WrestleMania ever. It was the biggest pay-per-view buy rate they ever had. It was and for years it stayed that way. They took their time and built the story. Whereas during the Monday Night Wars, we got into the point where, hey, we got to have a pay-per-view every 4 weeks. Our storylines that used to be 6 months, boom, now there's 4 weeks. And so I'm a little worried that's going to be the inevitability with NXT being on weekly television, is that a lot of these storylines that were really juicy, that were stretched out over 3, 4, 5 months, are going to be compacted down to 6-week runs, and we're going to miss a lot of the good stuff.
Right. I mean, going on the perspective of the one that I know with Shayna, I don't think she'd be at the point to where she's at, not to take any thing away from her. She's a hard worker and she's a great individual, but I don't think the storyline's built as a champion. I want to say that they actually did it better with her than they did with Asuka. How they built her up with this dominant champion that keeps winning. That she would, not just because I know her, and I don't know her that really on a personal level. I've talked to her, I met her, I know her pretty well from talking to her, but I don't think she would have got a fair share if they would have done it the way they did with Asuka. I like how they did it with her, how they built it up with these champions. I mean, yeah, she did lose and then she won again, but I think it's done right, like you were saying, with like the old ways that the WWE used to do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she lost, but it was like a fluke roll up, right?
Right, yeah.
Like, the quick pin, and then she beat her up after the match, like immediately got her heat back, and then won her title back, and it was fine, no big deal. I think I really liked Asuka's build up better for me personally, because I just think Asuka's a little more overall talented. She's got more ability in the ring, but she's also been wrestling a lot longer than Shayna. Like, people don't realize for like 2 or 3 years at this point, and she's phenomenal. Like, most people that have only been wrestling for 2 or 3 years can't have a passable TV match. Like,
right.
It's so green, and she's phenomenal, and she's also one of the best people I've ever met in the business. Like, she's gone out of her way to do nice things for my kids, which is great. But bad guy, and she's mean, right? But yeah, no, I agree with you. Her build-up has been so great, and she's been such a dominant champion. Not only did they make her a big star, but the person who dethrones her, who beats her convincingly, is instantly going to be a star.
I was a little nervous on that.
I mean, I yeah. I mean, I have someone in mind who I'd like to beat her.
I think it would be perfect.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous with Rhea this last Wednesday. I thought maybe they were just going to go and pull that trigger, but they didn't, which I'm glad they did, that they didn't do that way. But I think, the one individual that I'm thinking, that you're thinking of, that we're all probably thinking of, would be a perfect concept.
Yeah, well, Candice always does better as a good guy when she has a bully. So if Shayna wants to be a big bully, and then they want to make Candice LeRae the, like, I'm never going to back down, I'm not going to give up. Like, one of she finally got her big match on a takeover. It was great, right?
Right.
And she tore her and Io Shirai tore the house down. It was a phenomenal match. My favorite thing about that match is that she didn't tap out. She didn't get pinned. She got choked out and fell asleep. Right. So already they established that she's not going to give up. She's going to keep kicking out, and she's not going to tap out. So that's perfect build up going into Shayna I hope she gets some wins along the way if that's the way they're going to go. But
well,
I think it would be great if she.
Before we end the show, I want to ask you guys this one. I want to hear from both of you on this, and obviously, Cole, you have a closer perspective as well. What do you think about this concept with Candice? Candice goes with Shirai a little bit longer, beats her, fully clean win. Then Rhea comes in and beats the bully. And then she has to work that and builds that up. And then after she wins against Rhea, which I don't know how they would do that, but I'd like to have that as a clean win. Then Candice has that big, huge build up, like I'm beating all these bullies. And now all of a sudden here comes Candice out on stage. And Shayna's like, who else is going to try to beat? No one else could. I beat this person, and that person. And then, Candice can come out and is like, well, I beat them too. And then that's when she goes over and wins the title. I think that would be a huge pop. That's just my opinion. So I'd like to hear what you guys think.
Oh, I love it. That would be perfect. I mean, that's what to me, that's the lost art in today's TV wrestling. Is, when we were kids, back in the 80s and the 90s and that, when we used to watch things, they had guys like that. Like Shawn Michaels. Let's go Bret Hart, because Bret Hart at least was the babyface, right? Right. So Bret Hart was a tag team wrestler for years, and they got him over as babyfaces. They were the tag team champions. They had a good run. Okay, they split. Then he came up, and he was the Intercontinental. Uh-oh. Sorry, I lost him there. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. But anyway, so Bret comes up and he's the Intercontinental Champion. He had a nice long run, had the great match with Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8. And then they used to build these guys up for years, and we used to know, like, okay, they're the Intercontinental Champion now. That means that they might be the next guy.
Right.
And that's kind of lost. Like, they just have everybody kind of winning matches, losing matches, is just in the middle of the card somewhere, and they're just kind of here. And then all of a sudden they win a match or two, and then they're in the main event and for the title, and here you go. We're supposed to care about it. So
right.
I like your idea. I hope they spend 6 months building up, because I don't know, 6 months puts us at about what, April? I think that'd be a good time to be the main event on a wrestling card in April.
I think that would be perfect for like a takeover for WrestleMania.
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. I like the way you think.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, and I also know that that Candice is amazing to carry any title, and she does her best when people underestimate her, and so everyone needs to keep underestimating her. She's gonna prove everyone wrong, like she's always has since the beginning.
Right.
So,
well, if you guys have anything that's coming up that you guys would like to promote, go ahead and say your piece before we end the show. Thank you. I just want to iterate. Thank you very much, Cole. You didn't have to do this. And anybody that, sees him on this show or listens to him, please give him all the respect. I mean, obviously if he wants you to like his page, follow him, do that. But, don't be those smart marks. Don't be don't be that guy is all I'm saying. But Cole, thank you very much. Tiger Man, thank you for allowing us to have the honor to have your friend come on also as well. But if you guys have anything you want to promote, go ahead and use this platform right now.
Go ahead, Dick.
Obviously, this podcast, when it comes out, listen to it. I'm also going to be in October at WonderCon. I'm going to be on a panel. So look that up. That's about it.
Well, yeah, I just want to say thank you.
What's that?
On the show, I appreciate.
Say that again, Cole. You kind of cut out a little bit.
Oh,
Take
I
two.
just want to say wanted to thank you guys for having me on the show. I appreciate any chance I get to talk about my sister Candice LeRae, or talk about wrestling and whatnot. And because realistically, I'm nobody like without my sister, so I'm totally fine. Plugging her and talking about her any chance I get, and I appreciate you guys, and I really appreciate Dave. He's been a good friend for a very long time, so thanks for thinking of me and having me on the show.
Yeah, it's been too long since we talked wrestling, man, and I miss it. You know what I mean? It's been maybe a decade.
Stunning Steve.
Yeah,
Stunning Steve.
Yeah, Stunning Steve. Let's leave it at that.
I just want to just clarify. The only reason why I laughed when Cole was mentioning Candace as his sister again is because earlier before we started the show, I said if you don't want to name drop, that's fine. He goes, dude, I'm all about name dropping. I'll name drop all day, every day. So I just thought that was funny.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence that I chose Cole to be on the podcast episode about NXT versus AEW. Let's put it that way.
Right. Well, if you guys want to find this show on Twitter, you go to all capitals BTC, U, lowercase n, capital C, lowercase t, capital LIVE on Twitter, or you can go to Kota Bear Club on YouTube, where you'll find the live shows on that network, which is the Kota iRadio network. You can also go to btcwrestling.com. You can join the group if you like to talk wrestling, or just like to rib people. But go to there, and you can also see the show there. Like I said, once again, Cole, thank you very much. It's our honor. Tiger, man, it's been an honor and a pleasure again. If you guys see this, put this in the comments below if you want to see Cole come back on the show, because I'm more than happy. I think this went great. We can, if we can make him as a regular, and that's up to you guys. But my name is DJ Barbecue for Cole and David. People, have a good night. Peace.
You're looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. So they might be big in the game, like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast, didn't even get